How's everybody doing today? We're beginning knowledge as well. Rich people, they own libraries. Poor people own big TVs. Poverty starts in the mind before it reaches your hands, and knowledge is wealth. And I'm Issa Abu Issa.
This is Nafis Abu Zaid.
And this is Coach Gaines.
Naam. Assalamu alaikum to all of our audience who are Muslim. And how you doing, or welcome to whoever is not Muslim.
What's happening? You know what I'm saying?
Welcome to Knowledge is Wealth.
Uh-huh.
All right, tell you, we have a beautiful, a special edition here today. We're doing an article review for our third episode on the Knowledge is Wealth financial show. We're going to do take a real glimpse into the past, into a beautiful story, which is about two stories together, which is the Elmore Bolling story. All right, and hopefully after the end of this talk, you will know who Elmore Bolling is. Mm-hmm. Likewise, we have a story from Robert Gordon as well, and we're going to highlight their stories and show how it all plays and ties in to financial literacy. All right, Coach is going to be the orator today, and we know we'll stop and ad-lib as we go, inshallah.
Okay, so we're taking from an article from the 1619 project that was done by New York Times, and they brought the Elmore Bolling story, and
speak up a little bit.
They brought the Elmore Bolling story, and then for the other story
is Robert Gordon.
Gordon, we got that from Black Enterprise, the first issue.
Yeah.
So Elmore Bolling, whose brothers call him Buddy, was a kind of one-man economy, and Lounsboro, Alabama.
I want you to stop right there. So now, the reason I want you to understand, the point while we're bringing this story going back in the past, you're going to see that one-man economy statement is very important because, we're talking about financial literacy. Just as a disclaimer, just because we're talking about financial literacy doesn't mean we're talking about fiat currency. That's not the only type of thing that deals with money. I know everybody think of money, they think of fiat currency, paper, dollar bills, greenbacks, as they say. All types of currency can fall under the system or the knowledge of financial literacy, in terms of getting and accumulating. But that's not what we're talking about. We're not just talking about greenbacks. Just to make that disclaimer. Go ahead.
He leased a plantation where he had a general store with a gas station out front and a catering business. He grew cotton, corn, and sugarcane.
So here we see a little bit more rich dad versus poor dad. Here he leased a plantation. So we know that plantation was a plot of land. So here he was able to do what?
He was able to lease it.
He was able to lease the land. And what he did on the land is that he made commerce.
General store. Gas station.
Well, it shows that land. Business. It shows that land at the end of the day is the true wealth. You know what I'm saying? Because you can generate generational wealth from land. You can constantly produce on it.
And that's one of the biggest highlights that we're going to talk about later by why real estate is so key in regards to accumulating wealth.
And notice he's leasing the land.
And he's leasing.
So now to tell a person, to make a person feel inferior for not owning his land is a misconception. You have to have knowledge of your business and what makes it go. And you have to have access point. So your access point might not always be ownership of the land, but as he did, he leased the land, but he owned his business.
Yeah, and due to the circumstance or the climate that he was in, maybe he was prevented from actually buying the land, and we don't know.
We don't understand
because,
all
like we said, this goes back into when a lot of that,
Well, it might have been also. It might have been his relatives' land from the begin with. He just couldn't own it anymore. A lot of times you find those situations back then where they owned it. You know what I'm saying?
So what he did is he had his hand in multiple different projects. That's what I want you to see. The person who was financially astute, as they say, the one who is actually adequate, is the one who's going to be like an octopus, so to speak. His hands is not going to be in one source of income.
Right.
He's going to have multiple streams of income.
So he had a gas station, one stream of income, catering business, another stream of income, cotton, another stream of income,
cane.
Corn, another stream of income, and sugarcane.
And that's why it's extremely important
It's
extremely important that when you want to accumulate something, you have to understand what we mentioned before in episode 2 about the budgeting and assets and liabilities. See, here Elmore was actually thinking smart. He was weighing his assets against his liabilities, and he was creating that multiple streams of income to allow him to have his assets to be outdo his
and
actual
also
liability.
he had to have a budget sheet as well to do all of that, like we were saying before.
And if you look at his business, he is smart for investing in commodities. Gas station, cotton was a major
commodity back then. Yeah,
the export for America, 100%. The sugar cane, so the
Sugar
livestock
was a big
so
major.
It wasn't just about
commodity.
having a business, but he was in tune to knowing what was wealth builders, and he invested in wealth builders and commodities.
And he understood what was commodities. And commodities, again, also plays a part with the assets thing. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have the misconception that because we are in today's world, in today's climate, a lot of people believe that we're not going to be able to achieve financial freedom because if we got a salary of $12.50 an hour, we're not going to be able to do it. We are blocked off from this. And I want to highlight within this talk and even with this show, we go against that concept. You can actually reach and acquire financial freedom. You have to have the know-how.
You have to have the knowledge first. So moving forward, so he also owned a small fleet of trucks. Look, he embodied, like he was a one-man economy. So on that plot of land, he was able to put these multiple streams of income, which encompassed the huge market share, the economical market share. So he had trucking, so he was doing his own deliveries, right? He had a small fleet of trucks, and he also ran livestock. Right now, we're going through this coronavirus, pandemic, and everybody's going to the supermarkets and they're clearing out the shelves for certain things.
And one of the commodities which is going is toilet paper.
One of the commodities that are going is toilet paper. Another commodity is food. So now if you had your own livestock, right?
Yeah.
If you had access to your own produce, you might not even have to expose yourself to the supermarket at the level of panic.
One of the things that's smart that he's doing is you see him investing in things that people are always going to need.
Yes.
So like real estate,
knowing the market.
land, food. I mean, stuff that gets traded on the stock market as well.
Yes.
I mean, stuff that people's always going to need. You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, say if people run out of toilet paper. I seen a picture of a lady somewhere in America selling toilet paper for $60 because they ran out. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that's cool, but I'm saying the point I'm making is she's investing in the commodity.
Well, that goes into the concept
people don't
of inflation.
Have it. Exactly.
So we're not there yet, but we'll understand how all of this stuff plays in.
And also look how he's allowing the commodities to work for him, well as the money. So he didn't stop and suffice himself just with a gas station and just paying off the rent for the lease. He didn't do that. What he did is he said, I'm going to allow my money to work for me. And remember, if you go back 2 episodes, we were talking about the importance of allowing your money to work for you. And I wanted to bring this here. I wanted to wait, but I'm going to bring it now. Many of us don't understand that there is a quadrant, that is out there. When it comes to the world of business, there are 4 groups of people, all right? You have the left side of the quadrant, you have the right side of the quadrant. Now, the 4 groups of people that are out there that exist, you have an employee. Most of us start at this level, right? And then you have what we call a S-type. This person is a person who owns his job, sort of like how we see Elmore is doing here. People who have, like Coach Gaines, people who have stores, people who have ventured into different businesses of their own to actually create and accumulate. Accountants, doctors, all of them fall under that. Rappers, entertainers, they all fall under the S-type. Do you understand? That's the left side of the quadrant. The right side of the quadrant, you have business, people who own businesses. Now, the difference between S-type and the businesses is because businesses is meaning that people who own corporations, systems, like, for example, the person who owns McDonald's. You get what I'm saying? He created a perfect system, right, that allows people to keep buying, and he doesn't have to even be there. He doesn't have to even exist. So you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, he does.
So if you create that business, whereas though
the system is in play without his actual physical input.
And the way that you tell the difference is the S-type, his business
is him.
Right. So if he leaves his business, his business crumble. It goes down. But if the B-type on the right side of the quadrant leaves the business, he can go for 2 years and it still actually accumulate more than when he was going because he created a perfect system. Then you have what we call the I-type, the investor. Now I want you to take a look at this. Those 4 classes of people. Let's look at Elmore Bolling here. right? Look how smart he was in terms of making sure that he had both legs. That's what Robert called having both legs. You want to be on both sides of the quadrant or just on the right side of the quadrant. So you don't just want to be an employee. That's not what you just want to be. And most people, when they want to be an employee, they don't work for money. I know a lot of people say, what you mean? Employees don't work for money. They work for what we call security. That's what they work for. They're working for whatever pension they're going to get, whatever, making sure that check going to be there. They're relying on someone to pay them. That's what they're working for.
Yep.
So they don't think outside the box, or they don't think to invest because they're stuck in that world. Now, a person who does the S-type, what do they work for? They work for independence. A person who wants to work for himself, he don't wants to be confined or I got to move on your time or on your clock. That's not always necessarily good working for independents.
No, and they get taxed the most too, the left
You
side.
want to know why? Because a person who works on the S-type works twice as hard than the one as an employee. So you're still an employee in both. The business guy, he's the individual who reaps the benefits because he created a system where he's employed. And if he's going to read on a little bit more and show you how Elmore created employment out of these jobs, because he couldn't run all of them himself. So he was employing people to work these things for him that he was able to set up. Go ahead, Shay.
Yeah. So,
But this is what I just want to say this. What our brother meant by somebody owning McDonald's is that a person created McDonald's. There was a person who created the idea, who established the idea, who established the first restaurants, and he owned it. And then eventually,
Well, he franchised
Eventually, he franchised it, and it became public and became shareholders and things like that because people like to, interject themselves. So I would like to just clear up what our brother meant by somebody
Well,
owning
we
it.
know that once they open it up publicly to the shareholders, we're not saying one person owned McDonald's,
we're
but it
talking
did
about-
start
it started
initially
with a
from an
system.
idea.
Yeah.
It
And
started
they
with
have a
an idea.
documentary on the
Yeah, they do.
on
And the
on
guy who actually did
started
it, and
and how he
then
put the system
you get
together.
investors, and then once it becomes corporized, once it becomes a corporation,
It
then
goes
you get public,
and
then you
it
can do
shares.
shareholders.
Yeah, but
that's how that normally
But
goes. It's a
it
system.
can't get to having shareholders.
Yeah.
And it can't get to going public if in and of itself is a system that's reliant upon
Yeah.
the founding
And usually that family,
Sort of like
family
this.
still are the largest shareholders. Usually the family still
Yeah.
own like 51%.
Well, some people be able to still do that.
Yeah.
Sort of like Napoleon Hill said in Think and Grow Rich. He was explaining about the Coca-Cola company, right? If you really think about it, it started off as an idea. That's number one. That person who had the idea had to go out and sort out investors for that idea to grow legs. You understand? He had to get people to believe in the idea that he has, and now look at it and how the way that Napoleon Hill put it. He said on that piece of napkin, it was worth about $6 billion. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
At that time, it wasn't worth that, but he created that by having investors and so forth. So it just show you how the potential can go.
Exactly.
What you gonna say?
So just the difference between the benefits of the system, of having a system,
Exactly.
and the system working in the absence of the owner of the system,
Well,
so that you're not binded by the business, making you an employee of the business and not a true investor.
Well, that person could be dead, and that system still is going to make money.
Right.
Well,
You know what I'm
that
saying?
It exists without his presence.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you want to do. You want to be able to get yourself to a point where you create an efficiency system that allows you to do it. It's a beautiful story, but I don't got time to really go into that story. But you'll understand the difference between a business owner and a person who's B-type and a person who's S-type. Breaking down, just paraphrasing, the way that Robert explained it is that they had a certain village that ran out of water. Right? And the only way they can get the water is they didn't have a direct pipeline.
Yeah.
So they had to go outside of the town to get the water. So Bill, he said, listen, I can get the water for you guys on the weekends. I'm going to get the water for you. You pay me. So he would go out on the weekends to get the people water and bring them water. And it was okay. But guess what? Bill was making money, but Bill was working twice as hard. Because Bill had his regular life during the week, and then the people only can get their water
On the
weekends. But he had to work twice as hard, so he had to get 2 more buckets and 4 more buckets, and then he got his kids to work with him. Okay, it's a business system. But then they contracted someone else. The other guy that contracted, what he did is he didn't come back right at. He was gone for about 6 months. When he came back, what he did in the 6 months, he went out and got investors to invest in the idea of creating a pipeline to a certain place, which will provide the water to the valley, to the actual village where they were at. And then he went there. So when he came back, he told the people, listen, this is what I was able to do. You're going to pay me for the service of the actual pipeline. This is the difference between a what?
B and a
S-type
S. Yeah.
and a B-type.
Right.
See how he created a system versus Bill, was creating what?
The S-type is the
He
first
was
guy.
doing the business independence for himself and so forth. And then what he did is he left the village and he went and did that around all of the villages that didn't have a direct pipeline.
So he created a corporation and a company.
He started a corporation. Yeah.
He franchised it.
Yeah, go ahead. So we can finish.
So trucks that ran live trucks, he scaled it.
Then he scaled
He
it.
scaled it.
Yeah.
He didn't franchise it. It was scaled when he
was
did
scaled.
that.
Yeah, he
So
scaled
the
it.
system allows you to scale your business.
And he still made money off his idea without him doing all the work.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly what he did.
So at his peak, Bolling employed as many as 40 people, and all of them were black like him. So we're gonna this is really the part that we wanted to highlight. If you guys want to go into more of this story, you
No,
can
you can
see a
finish
lot.
some of it. I want to finish some of it. Let's
Well, I
finish
mean,
some
one
of
of the things I'll pull out from that's very important, he said he employed 40 people, all of them indigenous like himself, right? The thing about it, what was deep about that, it shows that one person employed 40 people. One person had an idea, he had a business, and he employed all the people in his neighborhood, those 40 people in his community, right? So what's happening is, though, one of the things that does is like when my grandmother, we should tell us, or my great grandmother, stories that in the neighborhood, poverty wasn't like it is now because everybody had their own business and the people in the neighborhood worked at that particular place, right? Say if you had 10 business owners, that 10 business owners employed everybody in the neighborhood. And so what they did is that you never had this overly poverty like you do now because one person aided the other. One hand washed the other. So you needed bread, you needed this, you needed that. Everybody in the house worked in the same neighborhood, bought from the same stores. So it created almost like a chain effect if I'm using the same word. So poverty was put in check. Not like it is now because
it was helped to curtail it.
yeah,
It was helped to
exactly. So
actually
people were
prevent
helping
it a
on
little
it.
bit.
It was preventative measures and how poverty was laid out. Put it like this: not that people wasn't poor. It was the simple fact that you were dependent on your community, not the authorities.
Yeah.
Like it is today, where the indigenous community is basically dependent on the authorities, not their own community.
Well, when you got greed in play,
yeah, all
when
of
you
their
got
needs are
greed,
being satisfied
different,
by big corporations.
Exactly. When you got certain things
That's a
in play,
monopoly.
that becomes monopoly, and people monopolize on certain things. So that's why you see poverty being so definitive as it is now,
Yeah, exactly.
as opposed then, because there's always going to be classifications.
Yeah, exactly.
We were just talking about the verse
And
where
we're in
Allah
the
says,
cap- okay.
Allah says, "Wallahu faddala ba'dakum ala ba'din fi rizq."
No.
Allah says in Surah Nahl, what did He say? Allah is the one who has preferred you over others. Some of you over others in terms of provisions. So in terms, there will be a classification. There'll be some of you who will be wealthy. There'll be some of you
middle.
who will be poor. Be some, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In between. That's the classification that's
But
going
the
to happen.
issue is greed, and
Yep.
this capitalist culture that we live in.
Exactly.
It dehumanizes people, the person that is investing and the person that is actually working. So this monopoly that takes place when Walmart buys everything and sells it below anything that can even compete with it. It takes the money out of the neighborhood and doesn't allow me to wash
So
hands.
it destroys the small businesses. Like for example, Home Depot destroyed the corner hardware store.
Yeah, we used to have hardware stores
Yeah.
right here on Girard Avenue.
Yeah, destroyed it.
There was a hardware store
Yeah.
on Fairmont Avenue. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah. I know
Home
what you mean.
Depot, you can't compete with it. They got everything, and it's at a price that is
there's no way you can
there's
win.
no way you can win. So that's capitalism. It's showing you, that the big bank is going to take the little bank every time.
So here's my question. I would say to one of you can answer. So basically, like the brother he read the ayat where basically we're going to have I don't want to say classism. That's a lack of better words, but we're going to have people in position. We're going to have rich, middle, poor, right? Mm-hmm. So that's not the problem. Would the problem necessarily be the behavior that people do within those classes?
What if
You understand what I'm saying?
But if you look at the system, how Islam plays it, Islam taxes the rich.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that it taxes the rich, it doesn't take from the best of the rich. It doesn't take from their best. But it puts a place of responsibility on them that Allah provided for all of you, and that now your responsibility that it must trickle down. So this wealth that Allah bless you with, you must favor those who are lesser than you, and by giving something of that. So it keeps a system in play.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened is people start to get greedy. People start to realize that, we can monopolize on this. And we already know that as we're going back.
Yeah.
People
a lot of the ills and
a lot of the
ills,
the slavery
nightmares.
went over into employment, as Allah says in another verse in the Quran that Allah Jalla mentions. He talks about how the Quraysh at that time was, they was coming at the Prophet ﷺ, and they were saying that why would Allah reveal this revelation to? Why didn't He reveal to the two great chiefs of that actual town?
Yeah.
So Allah says, "Ahum yakusumun rahmat rabbik." Is these the people that's going to distribute the portion of Allah's mercy, of your Lord? Allah says, نَحْنُ قَسَّمْنَا بَيْنَهُمْ مَعِيشَتَهُمْ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. Allah said, we are the ones who, now pay attention to this because they're talking about Allah's mercy. Allah Jalla wa Ala giving His revelation, Allah giving provision, Allah giving this or giving that, that still contains Allah's rahmah in it. Do you understand this? Classification, reverence, all of that is Allah's rahmah. Look what Allah is calling us through this verse. He says, نَحْنُ قَسَّمْنَا بَيْنَهُمْ مَعِيشَتَهُمْ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. Allah said, no, we distribute, we portion out their livelihood in the life of this world. Meaning what you're going to get, what you're not, we do that. Then look what Allah says at the end of the verse. Allah Jalla wa Ala says, وَرَفَعْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ فَوْقَ بَعْدٍ بَعْدٍ لِيَتَّكِذَ بَعْضُهُمْ بَعْضٍ سُخْرِيًّا. Allah says, and we have placed and made some of you above others. You understand? We have made some of you above others in order that you take some people into employment. In order that you take some people into the service of you. Do you understand where this employment comes in? Then Allah says, ذَلِكَ رَحْمَةُ رَبِّكَ خَيْرٌ مِمَّا يَجْمَعُونَ. Allah said that is from the mercy of your Lord. It is better than all that which you assume, what you amass, you remember what you gather. But if you think about this, Allah has set this in place. So being poor in and of itself is not a crime. All right? Being poor in and of itself isn't a crime. It's
your behavior.
It's the behaviors,
That's
those
It's
that
your etiquette.
It's your
It's your
etiquette.
gratitude.
Exactly.
That allows Allah to give you and remove you from the state. It's changing the condition of yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Seeking the proper knowledge. Not being heedless, right?
yeah, we get to
So we can work our way into a different position. And with hope and love and fear, this is what our worship is based on. So we're gonna get into a different part now of this particular article.
Finish.
We're gonna finish up. We're going to a different paragraph, which kind of changes the tone a little bit. On 1 December day in 1947, a group of white men showed up along a stretch of highway, along a stretch of Highway 80, just yards from Bolling's home and store, where he lived and his wife Bertha, May, and their seven young children. The men confronted him on a section of road he had helped lay and shot him 7 times. 6 times with a pistol and once with a shotgun blast in the back. His family rushed from the store to find him lying dead in a ditch. The shooters didn't even cover their face. They didn't need to. Everyone knew who had done it and why. He was too successful to be a Negro, someone who knew Bolling.
Before you go on, I want to highlight something here. I know that's tragic, but I really want to highlight something here. Success comes with a price. All right? Any success comes with a price. We have to understand as Muslims, whatever you have, the Prophet ﷺ says, "Kulli ni'ma mahsud." Every blessing that you have is what? Envied. Every blessing that you get or acquire is going to be envied. That can happen from your loved ones. That can happen from your friends. That can happen from other classes or other ethnicities. That can happen through all types of different things. So it's not the point about somebody hating what you have or hating what you got. Just know that comes with the territory. Knows that comes with the territory. We'll talk about the line of defense later, but I just wanted to mention that point.
Yeah, I mean, and also it shows the sabotage that's been going on in this country for the last 150 years. I mean, obviously, this is 1947. That wasn't that long ago. No. And the Negro Wall Streets existed.
My dad was born in 1959.
Is that my mom was born in the early 1950s. So I'm saying is like this clearly, and my mom has stories, you know what I'm saying, from the 60s and 70s. So the reality is that when you talk about sabotage, like we were talking about earlier, when you're not allowed to have traction, and they don't have to do that anymore because you just create a system like Redline and other things, create a system that does the same exact thing without the brutality. So if you just create a system and put systems in place, you can basically keep 70 to 80% of the people in the position you want them in. Just because some people get through the cracks and they become successful. But if you look at the rest of their people who are not being successful, it's not just because somebody's lazy. It's not just because people are just ignorant and stupid. No, that's not the reality. The reality is that right there, that sabotage, it went from brutality to a political, economic system that's been put in place to do the same exact thing.
Well, they call it systemic racism, but This is not the point we're trying to highlight. We have to talk about this because most people know, people have made statements such as, we can't have assets, we can't get further ahead, we can't have generational wealth because we are natives or we are black, and they have placed a generational gap between us, white wealth as versus black wealth. And this is true, but it's not true in total reality. In other words, what I mean is, we can now, for our parents, for our ancestors, there were things in play that prevented them from getting ahead. But for the millenniums, and even for the people who are now at this time, there are things we could do that allow us to move fast. What I wanted is, yeah, we acknowledge that that did happen, and that there is to date certain things that divide the racial gap. As far as the wealth, I'm talking about the gap of the wealth gap.
Yeah.
It is still things in play.
There's an educational gap and there's a wealth gap.
There are things in play. We do understand that. That's the reason why we're bringing this in here, such as redlining. What is redlining? Okay, so we're going to talk about redlining. Redlining, this is a part of that article that explained to you that with the bank did, they also did it in insurance. They also did it, what they was able to do was they was able to pretty much take an area, right? And they would place the red line around this area, and they would say that this area was highly what? This area was actually, it was so discouraged or discredited to deal with these people, but they did it with a group of people. They did it with a group of blacks. They said that we're not going to loan to them. We're not going to give them small loans. We're not going to give them houses where so they can have mortgages. And it was set up that way so that they can keep one group of people down and not actually flourishing. Actually, there is a film coming out with Samuel L. Jackson where he's going to be dealing with the banker. It's going to be Apple TV where they're going to be dealing with some of the concept of the redlining. And it's true. Redlining did actually happen. But like I said, we're going to talk about some solutions that shows us even though with financial literacy, no one can stop you. And with the fact of Allah Azza wa Jal, no one can stop you. Allah is the one who provides for all of us. Bottom line. No one can pretty much stop you. So I don't want no one to be stuck in the past. Well, we can't get ahead. The white man got his foot on my neck. That type of concept is going to keep you where you at.
No, but in the past, though, our ancestors actually were better off economically than we were. Negro Wall Streets, we had 60 of them. We had banks. I mean, actually, they were actually economic and educationally better off than we were.
Yeah, but they were more financial literate.
Yeah, we collapsed in the 60s after segregation. That's when economically and educationally, we really started to collapse.
Yeah, but they were more financial literate. That's the point we're trying to show you. You get ahead. It's a statement they said, لا يدرك النائم أنه يحلم إلا بعد ما يستيقظ. They said that the person who is asleep, he doesn't even know that he's dreaming until after he wakes up, right? They said كذلك الغافل عن الآخرة, like the one who is heedless about the hereafter, right? It says what? لا يدرك, right? This individual does not know, right? This مَادِيعٌ إِلَّا بَعْدَ مَا يَأْتِيهِ الْمَوْتِ. He does not know what he have lost until after death comes to him. He don't know what he have lost out of his life, what he did, right? So we ask Allah to protect us from being heedless. That's why staying woke, arming yourself with knowledge, that's why we say knowledge as well. Financial literacy will pitch you ahead of the game every time, and that's what it did with Elmore Bolling.
And that shows,
even though he had a tragic end.
That shows that even though they were faced with more physical oppression than we were in certain aspects, right? Obviously, we got to deal with the police, deal with other issues as well, some of the same issues as well. Yeah. But when I used to talk to my elders, man, they dealt with stuff, but at the same time, they still flourished more economically than we did, even in that climate, because of literacy, because of knowledge. We said knowledge is wealth. We lack those knowledge skills.
But we can reach heights today that they never reach. We can reach heights today that they never reach. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Yes, there are still remnants, a lot of remnants to date with a lot of generational wealth gap, but not necessarily. And that's the solution me and Coach wanted to bring up. It's a way that we can accumulate more than what our ancestors actually had. And how do you do that?
You have to understand this tech world.
Exactly.
Tech is the new language.
We can do more than they did.
Because we have AI now. You didn't have AI back then. You didn't have artificial intelligence.
The internet, even the playing field. You can do business outside of your locale.
But what you did is you had real estate. Honestly, let's be honest. Many people who go to work, right? And a lot of people who still talks about we're still stuck in this past. Think about it. Ask them, how many of them are working with the quadrant? Is they still stuck on the left side of the quadrant that we mentioned earlier?
I
Are
see
they
people
even
run
investing?
through a lot of money.
Are
The
they
kind of
really-
money that you
Exactly.
need to pull some of these things off is not the same amount of money that we're throwing out the window every single day with poor habits.
Exactly. I'll give you a big example here. When we are taught, right, in school, in the industrial age, you're taught to go to school, get a good job, get a job that got benefits. That's how you know it's a good job. It gives you a pension. It gives you the security, right? This is what you're taught. Now, you don't, instead you're taught, get a house, get a car. This is all accumulate debt. The house, the way you're going to go about it with the credit, all of this is going to accumulate you debt and place you
Car
right.
lease and all that
All
stuff.
of that stuff going to place you in debt, right? This is what you're taught. But how many of us really think that, no, we accumulate our money and we buy land? How many of us thinking of buying land? Me and the brother was talking about this before. Buying plots of land. If you buy land, what would you have to pay on it? You probably have to pay property taxes,
Land-
of course.
like a land tax.
A
Not
land
property
tax,
tax,
not
yeah.
property tax, but you pay a land tax, right? But still, if you buy land, what can you do on that land?
The same thing that
The
Elmore
same-
Bolling did.
Same thing this gentleman did right here.
You can actually build on top of
You
that
could
land.
put your own personal, economic.
You can create employment.
System.
So real estate is one of the lanes you can use to help fight the generational wealth gap. You understand that? So for people who saying that, no, we can't do it because our system hasn't changed, I don't agree with that. A rapper right now is an S-type. It's on the left side of the quadrant. But look what Waka Flocka actually said. He said, I made $30 million, all right, off of rap music. Whether we agree with it or not, whether it's haram or halal, that's not the story. Open your mind a little bit. I'm not here promoting rap. I'm just telling you the reality is he understood that $30 million now can become an investment for him
That he
for
can live
other
off of.
things that he can live in, so he can get into investing in businesses or creating businesses.
rap forever.
You can't rap forever. And he said this out of his own mouth. He said, yeah, I know I was a whack rapper. This is what he considered himself, but he was still able to accumulate something to go over. Because once you're on the S-type, you're nothing but a hard-earned employee. And if you don't know, the taxes that they pay is level against the left side of the quadrant. The person who is an employee gets taxed more. The person who is an accountant, the person who's a doctor, the person who goes in business for his own self, he gets taxed more.
Well, you
The
somebody
person
else's
who's-
investment, really.
Exactly. The person who's on the right side of the
Yeah.
quadrant, he beats taxes. He gets taxed less. Who owns a corporation, who owns a business, he gets taxed less. The one who is an investor, he don't get taxed at all because his money
It depends.
is invested. You know what I'm saying?
It depends.
Investors don't get taxed. Investors don't get taxed, period. When your money is, for example, let's say, for example, I place my money in one commodity, right? And I place my money in another commodity. Who's taxing you on that commodity?
You about the actual share that you bought.
The actual share. Who's taxing?
Yeah, while it's in investment.
Why
it's
is
not-
in investment?
they
You
can't
don't
tax
get
it.
They can't tax it.
Exactly.
They can't
Exactly
tax
why.
it.
That's exactly why it's understood. You don't get taxed as an investor.
While it's in investment.
Yeah, but if you're a business owner, a corporation get taxed, but
But
it's
when
less.
when you put your profits, they tax you on that when you file and you show your profits in your gain sheet.
that
they
you
tax
made
that.
from the investment.
Yeah,
that
they
you made
tax
once you
that.
pull it out.
Yeah, they
but the
tax
money works
While
for
it's
itself.
while it's in play,
Exactly.
they're not
The money
taxing
work
it.
for itself. Yeah. So we have to realize that real estate is one of them. Let's start thinking of buying lands, creating more jobs for ourselves. This is arming ourselves with knowledge. The second thing is another way of beating it is what you mentioned before, even with the tax savvy that we have. Now we can accumulate with the money that they have, and we can either be tax savvy or we can do what? We can do what we call group economics. Y'all guys keep sleeping on that.
They have blockchain technology right now that can follow an item from the time it was manufactured all the way for the life of the item.
I mean, somebody created Cash App and became a millionaire off Cash App. I mean,
There's
This-
things
I
we can
mean,
do.
that's-
We have to learn.
I
We,
mean,
have,
come
we
on.
have to become more literate in the tech space. We have to push our children into those more tech jobs because, as you see right now with the pandemic, everything that is internet driven, anybody that's offering services that prevent you from going outside,
You can make money.
That's who's winning right now.
If you got a skill or a trade, you can teach English, especially if you had a degree. You can actually start an online business right now and boom. For any entrepreneur that wants to be an entrepreneur, this is the time. During the
a good time.
coronavirus,
It's a good
this
time
is
to
one
be
of the
alive.
times
It's a
to
good time to be
actually
alive.
make money. But if you're not trained financially, literate, you're not going to do it. And if you're still stuck with a pessimist mindset, oh, we're not going to get nowhere because they didn't created this red lining, they created this gap. No, that's not how it is. We're going to understand that Allah is the sole provider, not the white man, not the black man. It's Allah. It's all Allah's risk. So don't think just because they put this in play against an institution or a group of people, you can't move ahead.
well, what about
No.
this? If somebody puts something in front, just walk around it. I mean, it sounds simple, it sounds funny, but just walk around it. And the brother's not saying that it's not going to be difficult. He's not saying they're not going to discriminate. He's not saying that stuff exists. The point the brother's making is that, okay, we see the wall. Either you're going to climb over it or you're going to keep walking into it.
We're going to knock it. We're going to knock it.
We're going to knock it.
Or you going to let it shack you.
We're going to knock it down.
Then, go ahead.
So let's go into Robert Gordon. I want to get into Robert Gordon because he
does some of that.
He does a lot of what we talked about. He
Yeah.
does that. And I don't want to go too far into the time, how much time we have. I don't know if we're paying attention to that. But just to kind of end up, Robert Bolling, not Robert Bolling.
Robert Gordon.
Elmore Bolling.
Elmore, just to wrap up Elmore Bolling and to go into Robert Gordon.
Yeah.
So when Bolling was killed, his family estimates he had as much as $40,000 in the bank.
Okay.
And more than $5,000 in assets.
Okay. Now,
about $500,000 in today's dollars.
Okay, I want to stop here. Now, you heard that? He had $40,000 in the bank. He had what? How much in assets?
5,000.
5,000
in
assets.
Now, you see how important that was? He created multiple streams of income. How do you get financial freedom? Multiple streams of income. Or you can have two streams of income where your income actually succeeds your labor. If you don't got to work just as hard, your passive income overcomes that.
Yeah, exactly.
So you get what I'm saying? And then it takes over your expenses. So you can accumulate that. So that was something good right there. You can go into the Robert Gordon story now.
So we're gonna end it there, and that was very inspirational. And
eventually they did come and took all his They killed him and took all his stuff.
Yeah, that's the tragedy. And we want to just focus on the positive. Yeah, we know it's a brutal history, man. Go ahead.
So Robert Gordon, businessman. Robert Gordon, a black man who lived in Cincinnati from about 1847 through his death in 1884. Makes occasional appearance in obscure historical accounts of the 19th century Cincinnati. He pops up in popular press accounts as a former slave who made a fortune in coal business. Yet it turns out that Gordon left a considerable documentary trail in Cincinnati that allows a more subtle understanding of the man and his family and business. Gordon's origin story is common for free blacks in Cincinnati. He began his life enslaved. His master, described as a Virginia coal merchant and a yachtsman, put Gordon in charge of the coal yard. He allowed the slave to have the slack, the coal dust. So you know what the old saying, "Cut me some slack." So it's like, man, you can't even cut me some slack. So the slack was the coal dust, the leftovers. So we see how he got his entryway into starting his own. So the coal dust that covered everything in the yard. Gordon managed to make the slack useful to industrial customers. This is now evidence how he processed and marketed the waste dust.
So what it comes in there right there is that it shows that he found his niche.
He found his niche.
Also,
he was resourceful.
Not only that, it goes back to what we said in the first episode. It doesn't pay well just being an employee. You have to learn how to let your money work for you.
But he was on the job.
He was on the job
as a slave, and he saw an opportunity.
So it goes back to the $2 thing when the guy said, "Listen, I'll pay you $2, but you can learn on the job." Exactly. It goes back to that.
Not only that, he allowed what he had, his knowledge, and he allowed what he was accumulating to work for him.
In the capacity, inside of the
that's how he was able to come. So if you're working at a job, you shouldn't be like, okay, I'm just going to go to work and security, that's it. Yeah. Because once that crashed, once your boss come in and say, listen, we got to let you go, I'm sorry, your whole world crashed. What happened?
Have to be looking around.
How many people killed themselves? Suicide rates went up.
Yes.
When they come out there and say, Willie, I need to come out. When they come out and say, Willie, I need to talk to you in the office.
Yeah, and let you go.
It's over.
And your whole world come crashing because you haven't set up any safety nets. So while you were on the job, you should have been learning
the job.
You should be learning the job.
What's useful for you? How can you utilize this to create some cushion for yourself? You can still remain an employee, but you can invest.
You can pay attention.
And that's what he
heedless.
did.
He wasn't heedless.
He invested in the same job he was doing.
But look at what's driving our economy right now. Yeah. Byproducts are making new products.
Okay.
People are being resourceful. They're doing waste management, search and rescue. There is no waste.
There you go.
You know, they have these abandoned buildings. They have all of this scrap. How do you turn that into new invention?
Perfect. Understand that. Another man's trash is a what?
Is another man's treasure. So Gordon embodied this with this particular move that he made, which was genius. Yeah. The coal dust that covered everything in the yard. Gordon managed to make the slack useful to industrial customers. There's no evidence. I think there's a typo. There is now evidence how he processed the marketed the waste dust. If the process were obvious or simple, it certainly would have been exploited by its owners. And I got to use us as an example. Me and Najee Clark from Chester, we would go to Cliffs, which is a lumber yard. They cut wood. And when we first started search and rescue, we were making furniture out of live edge wood, and that wasn't mainstream. It was not really cut, it wasn't really treated. It was rough cut. It was left, as it was, so we could see all of that character. But you couldn't buy that from the lumber yard. The lumber yard has a
the fresh cut,
they got to give it to you fresh cut. They got to give it to you clean, and that's what people are buying. That's the market. So, I think Najee showed Cliff a picture, or asked him, did he have any leftovers that we can do something like this with, and the guy asked and said, "What you doing with this stuff? Yeah, you can get it, but what you doing with this stuff?" So he went into explaining, "Now we're gonna make tables, we're gonna do this, that, and the third." And it's okay. He comes back like a year or so later, and he got raw slabs up, going for thousands of dollars. So we were like, "Wow, he wasn't even hip to that," and we put him on. But what we were doing for survival ended up becoming a luxury.
Yeah.
In rough lux design. So. Same thing you can see here with him taking a slack and making something out of it. Taking nothing and turning it into something. Knowledge is wealth. We have to understand
knowledge as well.
Yeah.
So Gordon found his way to Cincinnati. Most accounts say he arrived in 1847. Although I have discovered no documentary evidence about him in the city until the next year, to be sure, a transit freeman would be unlikely to leave much official trace. On November 1st, 1848, he paid the considerable sum of $2,000 for a property on the Miami Canal at 8th and Lock Streets. It seems Gordon established his residence and a business office there. On September 1849, so notice the two similarities between the two guys. Home and office. There's something smart about working from home, or having your business close to your home, or turning your house into economy. What do you think home economics was?
Yep.
They took that out of schools.
They sure did.
They took that out of schools. Each house is considered a business. Each business should be producing. Everybody should be working in unison.
And that's why it's important to understand the concept that your house is not your asset. Stop thinking you've done something
Until you make it an asset.
Stop
See?
thinking that's your biggest prize because you got a house. We spend all of our lives talking about, I want to get this house. I can leave my kids behind. And you think that that's it. No, you go into so much debt just getting that house. You wind up dying, not even paying off the debt.
Yeah, no doubt.
The children you leave to, if they're ignorant and don't know what to do, they don't even pay off the back taxes on it.
They lose the
and
house.
they wind up getting confiscated for the actual house. So this concept of working from home and everything like that, you have to know how to turn a commodity into a commodity so that you can make and benefit off of it, which in turn will benefit your family members off of it as well.
Well, you know
Turn
what's funny?
commodity into liquid.
What's deep is that when you had home economics, basically it was a trade school. And people went to school, high school. When they left high school, they had a trade. People had trades, and then you'll find that they started their own businesses in the neighborhood. Why do you think all these hardware stores came from and all these small businesses that was in the neighborhoods? Because people graduated high school with a trade.
Yeah, but that go against the design set by capitalism as they wanted to do. They wanted to produce workers. So they didn't keep the home economics.
They got rid of it, yeah.
Because they don't want people to be boss. They want people to work.
And I was living up Lansdale, near Phoenixville, and I seen a lot
That's part
of
of the
people
program.
that own their property. They had their contracting businesses, in their doctor's offices, in their dentist offices, all running out of their home.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
So guys, we have to think outside the box.
We have to.
So this was that was something that really, that was something that stuck out to me. On November 1st, 1848, he paid the considerable sum of $2,000. We read that already. So he lived and worked here. So not all, so he established his residence and business office there. On September 1849, Gordon got married. Eliza Jane Cressup. Not all the blanks on the recorded copy of the marriage license record are filled in. Robert's first name is recorded only with a squiggle. There is no notion even that both spouses were of legal age, and the name of the officiant is even more abbreviated than Gordon's. Several other records in the same book omit similar information. It is likely that the copyists couldn't make them out in the originals.
See if you can get to the finance.
Okay. It's not that long. Yeah. The 1850 census provides benchmark information on Robert Gordon's presence in Cincinnati. The census formed the census formed for the first ward, which included the area of 8th Street near Canal, shows the household consisting of just Robert and Eliza. She was at the time 25 years old. Her birthplace listed as Ohio, so she was born free. Robert set his age as 38, indicating he had arrived in Cincinnati in his mid-30s. The box for value and of real estate showed 2,500. So he's 30. He's 38. So it's never, guys, man. These are the ages of our peers that all of these things are taking place.
And just remember, he was in a time period where it was a whole lot more in his face than it is ours, and he still didn't give up, and he still was an entrepreneur, and he never backed down. So today, I mean, obviously we know some of the system is still in play, but like our brother Abu Zayd was saying earlier, they had more excuses to give up
than we have
today
to give up,
and they didn't.
Yeah.
You know
so the box for value of real estate showed 2,500, perhaps property or made another small investment elsewhere. Already, in short, the Gordons enjoyed a comfortable middle-class existence by any standards, complete with a single-family home. At about the same time as his marriage in the fall of 1849, Gordon set himself up as a coal dealer, and the 1850 census confirms that occupation. The first advertisement for his business I have found appeared regularly in the Weekly Catholic Telegraph, and he marketed himself. He actually paid for commercials and advertisement through the local Telegraph.
Well, let me
hold on real quick. Go ahead.
Let me bring this out, and we get just something that we should take a look at. Slavery is supposed to end in what? 1865, right? This 1849, this man was already had his own business, and slavery supposedly was still.
Well, he purchased his freedom. They said that in the beginning.
No, what I know, but a lot of people were like that, and when you start really looking into this, you'll find that a lot of us were free way before the Civil War.
Right.
And they was never even enslaved, but that's a whole other conversation. They had their own businesses and stuff like that.
One point I wanted to bring up about the marketing thing is important that you learn how to sell yourself. So if you're going to be an S-type, you're going to be a person that's going to be in any type of business, or even if you want to get a job, they teach you how to do it for an interview. You're selling yourself when you go to an interview versus a person going to the interview sitting down, slouched up, not wearing regular clothes and stuff like that. You always have to have the concept of selling yourself. So that should be something that we all should, at least equip ourselves with as far as marketing.
Yeah, everybody is a brand.
Exactly.
You are your own personal brand.
Exactly.
So if you keep that in mind, your appearance, your showmanship, your etiquettes, all of that is going to be what attracts people to you and want to work with you and things like that, or buy what you're offering.
You're a walking billboard, basically.
Yeah, because you can't just rely on your talent. A lot of people get caught up like that. You say, I know many talented people, they're extremely talented, but at the end of the day, they're like, why he don't got no liquid? Why he don't have no currency?
He has no financial
Why he have no financial currency? Why is this person not at the top? I mean, he's nice, he's dope, he got a dope hand, he got a dope this. And we know many people like that. Mm-hmm. You know this, Coach. We know many people like that. But how many of us are really skilled at selling ourselves?
He doesn't have a good billboard.
How many you see? If you look in these stories, these men wasn't just people who had a trade.
Yo, there was a brother.
They knew how to actually position themselves.
There was a brother on Facebook, Michael Ellington, right? He posted. He said your value, your core value, is built based on your ability to communicate.
Yeah, it's Big Mike.
Big Mike.
Yeah,
if you're able to effectively communicate, that is the sign off on your value.
Exactly.
On basically promoting yourself.
Talent is not just enough. And and I don't like to just read through the story. I want to stop and highlight some key points that make us think, because we see in these men being the one man economy, being the way that they was able to do this. You see a little bit of that. They knew how to market themselves. They knew how to actually understand that, look, my talent itself is not going to get me there. Mm-hmm. What I know is just not going to get me there. I have to utilize it as a means to get me there. Mm-hmm. All right? So you can be the best drawer. You can be the best person who can you can fix cars. You can be the best person, best designer, best fashion designer. It doesn't matter. You can be the best cook. They was talking about when we was doing the research before we did the restaurant, they was talking about how come Applebee's is so successful in the neighborhood towns that they're in. Mm-hmm. Why? Because Applebee's is not just selling you food; they're selling you the ambiance.
There's a famous black designer named Don Juan Harrell. He started the brand PRPS. Okay. He's doing Arts Meets Chaos right now. He made a statement. I don't know if it was on his social media, but or it was in one of his brandings on his clothing line. But he said hard work beats talent when talent refuses to work hard.
There you go. So
that statement resonated me from
marketing
that
is key, man. Learn about marketing.
Well, you got to get people to believe in you when you're in the business world.
Yeah, but you got to believe in yourself.
Yeah, I'm saying, so they obviously got people to believe in what they're doing. That's how people was able.
But their knowledge was so keen. You had to fool with.
That's what I'm saying. What I'm saying
you got the code.
That's what I'm saying.
You got the gas station.
Listen, the only way to access all of that, they had to believe in themselves. Obviously, they had to have knowledge, but they had to get other people who wasn't them to see the same thing they were seeing. Yeah. And their knowledge helped them do that.
But just to bring it home for the Muslims, right? Because I know that every time people think we talk about finance, it's like dunya. No, that don't mean that. Look at what Yusuf said to the king. What did Yusuf say? He said, place me over top of the storage. He said, I'm the best man for the job. Why? He had knowledge. He had knowledge of how to store up. When they was going to get the drought, when they was going to get that. What did he say? Place me over the storage. I'm the best man for the job, pretty much.
And he ended up getting a high level in the government based off of that initiative.
Which what he was doing actually also went back to the finances of the empire. Because without the storage, without dealing with the food stuff, the finances would have collapsed. So he actually kept the finances going. He has had knowledge of that.
That's why knowledge is wealth, man. Go ahead.
Okay, so Gordon found his way to his. Oh, so we read all of that.
You read all that. I'm trying to get down to the point before we run out. Some of the other stuff that he did. That's why I said go down a little bit more because most of the story.
No, it was right. It was right. No, we almost at the end. It's not. It wasn't long. I'm sorry.
It's right here. Yeah, he at the end of it.
Okay, yeah. So Gordon got himself set up as a coal dealer. The 1850 census confirms that occupation. The first advertisement for his business I have found appeared regularly in the Weekly Catholic Telegraph newspaper beginning in the late 1849 as Robert Gordon and Company, Coal Yard, 6th Street, east of Broadway, near the canal. The business was 2 blocks south of his home. It was on the same side of the same block at least as the shop of the black carpenter Thomas Crisp, whose name was spelled many different ways, including Cressup. It seems likely that Gordon's business was next to his father-in-law's. Later, real estate transactions indicate that Gordon assumed a lease on the coal yard property in October 50. The business progressed. In 1853, Gordon purchased the lot he had leased in 1850, officially as 6 and Culvert, for $2,250. The 1860 census increased the value of his real estate to $4,000. It is worth noting that the documented purchase prices of the 2 properties at 6th and 8th on the canal totaled $4,200. The $2,500 valuation in the 1850 census and the $2,250 purchase in the 1853 totaled closer to $5,000 than $4,000. For whatever reason, Gordon apparently undervalued his real estate for the census taker.
Pay attention to this,
He's
though.
probably trying to save money on taxes.
Look at this, though. But look what he did, though. He didn't just rent. The concept for all you people that's in the S-type, because see, I'm taking Jews from this story. Mm-hmm. He didn't just rent, bro. We're here renting spaces and renting places. Look what he did. He said he put himself in a position so when the opportunity presented itself, he bought the actual place. You understand what I'm saying?
That saved him a lot of money.
Not only that, we don't think like that. So most people, that's why they look at our class of people and they say, look, those individuals, they lazy. Those individuals, this stigma comes and follow us because look what we do. Poor decisions is what keep us in poverty.
Well, they basically say you're the biggest consumers. You're just consumers. You don't own anything. You don't even think that. You think like a consumer.
You don't even think financially strategically.
Yeah.
So I like the way that he actually bought and purchased the situation that he actually at hand. He allowed the money to actually work for himself.
They say the indigenous community is the biggest consumers in America. Like I think our GDP, how much money we put out is like larger than some countries. How much the indigenous people consume and spend and give out money. I think our money only goes around one time in our community or less.
Well, at least less than that. It's like the Jewish community passes about 17.
Yeah, something like that. So we actually put out more money out than we take in. So we're actually how much money we put out is larger than some GDPs of some other countries. Yeah. That's actually disgraceful.
What you looking for, Coach?
Nothing. So I'm just we can pretty much. It's some words,
At the end, it mentioned something about how much it is.
Yeah. So born a slave, Gordon eventually purchases freedom in 1846 In 1847, he invested $15,000 in Cincinnati coal yard and employed bookkeepers and laborers. White coal dealers in Cincinnati, in their attempt to price Gordon out of the market, sold their coal below market rates. Gordon employed multitudes to purchase the cheaper coal, eventually selling the supply at a high price after the white coal dealers had little left in their reserves.
Stop right there. Remember when we was talking about somebody said they could make $12.50 an hour? Oh, I can't do this for $12.50 an hour. I mean, this man was an ex-slave, right? I mean, but where did he get $15,000 from? Some way, somehow, he budgeted his money to the point where he had $15,000.
Well, that was from the slack.
Yeah, exactly.
He was making moves with the slack.
So at the time he was employed, even at that time, he was still coming up with ways to get money from what he was doing.
Financial literacy.
He had abilities.
You gotta chime this stuff out.
Yeah, he had abilities to do that. And then when he was ready to make a move, he had the money to make the move. That's the point I'm bringing out.
That's the point he's making out. Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And what was he doing? What was the strategy that he was doing?
And then he was a very advanced business owner. When they tried to box him out and drop the prices on him, and try to make him not competitive in the market, he went and bought all of their shares, bought all of their inventory, and then cornered the market to make everybody come back to him where he can maintain the prices that he wanted the market to be at.
What is that called? What was he doing? What was he doing there?
He was creating supply and demand.
Right.
That was the supply and demand strategy.
How was he counteracting them?
I just told you. He bought out their inventory so that they couldn't, their price gouging, lowering their prices like that wasn't going to affect him if he bought it all.
He controlled the prices.
When he bought them all out, he controlled the market.
Yeah.
So he understood, instead of complaining about, oh man, they dropping their prices, they're killing my business, he thought outside the box and bought their inventory.
Also, he was aware of his competitors.
He was aware of his competitors. Yeah.
But knowledge is wealth again.
Yeah. You have to be aware of your competitors.
Yeah.
Because when you have people in competition, what you're saying is right, but I'm saying we're just pulling and extracting. So he was aware of his competitors, and once they made their move,
he counterbalanced.
He's like, okay, all right, I know I got to do this now.
And that goes back to what I was saying in the other episode, where you have to have knowledge of the entire playing field. A lot of times we play from a disadvantaged point.
There you go.
And we don't understand how the sneaker got in our hand. It's like, I got the sneaker. But bro, the sneaker went through so many different hands to get to your hand.
Offense.
If you could have got inside of some of those plays, you could have ended up a part of that investment strand.
Yeah.
So, just being...
But we don't have an offensive plan. Usually we have just a survival plan. We don't have an offensive plan. You have a survival plan and a defensive plan. So when you think disadvantage all the time, you're always either in survival mode or defense mode. You're never in offensive mode.
But 9 times out of 10, the survival mode is not just so much the roadblocks that they place, the blockage that they place in front of us. It really be your poor decisions, man. If people really think about it, your poor habits, your poor decisions, because look at these people.
Following your desires.
Look at the circumstances that they were in, both of their stories, and look how they still was able to elevate themselves even in the climate that they were in. So that lets you know they were thinking rich. They have a beautiful saying. They say that richness is a state of mind, right? And what do we say in the beginning? We say poverty begins in the what?
In the mind,
before it reaches the hand. So if you're thinking wealthily wise, if you're thinking wise, and you're opening those channels,
you're going to be attentive.
You're going to be attentive. You're going to know what to use and how to strategize. Your person that's thinking like that is not a person that gives into excuses. You're not going to find a person who thinks a lot, always going to be sitting back saying, well, the white man got his foot on my neck, or this happened to our people and we can't get ahead, or this is going on and this can't happen. He didn't sit back and cry and say, you know what, they buying all of the, they raising up the price, boxing me out. He didn't just do that. What did he do? He said, okay, I know what to do. He went and bought all of the shares because he didn't sulk. He didn't sit down and say, you know what, I'm going to make all of excuses. And that's what we have to realize in the driving home for the Muslims is that we have something stronger than that. They asked Ibn Hatton, they said, you're not afraid of poverty? He said, how can I be afraid of poverty when my Lord owned the heavens and the earth and everything under the soil?
Allah.
Like, you understand what I'm saying? How can I have the concept of poverty when I already know that who's the all provider of everything? We got to have that mindset that we already ahead. You understand what I'm saying? And you have to arm yourself with financial literacy. If you are illiterate financially, you're not going to win. You're going to be an employee for the rest of your life, and you're going to be subject to someone letting you go. You understand? It's not wrong to be an employee, but let it work for yourself. So that's one of the highlighting things I wanted to bring. The red line, the evictions, the insurances, That's true. There is a generational gap between black wealth and white wealth. That is true.
And we're going to do talks on defense, different defensive strategies,
that we can
because it is a
actually put in
reality
play.
that the more you gain, the more there's going to be pirates. There's going to be, people that are going to try to take from you in the most sophisticated ways.
Yeah.
So, like you said, you work hard to get it, and you work twice as hard to keep it.
Yep.
So we're going to be talking defense, we're going to be talking group economics, and we're going to continue to expound on these concepts. But we just needed these stories to put us in, some framework.
We'll give you context.
And to give us context for a lot of the principles that we're covering. So in conclusion, I'm going to wrap up Gordon's story. He made that strategic move to counterbalance the pricing war that he was going through with his competitors. He sold their coal below market rates. Gordon employed multitudes to purchase the cheaper gold, eventually selling the supply at a high price after the white coal dealers had little left in their reserves. At the time of this death, 1884, he left an estate worth $200,000, nearly $5 million by today's standards. So,
that's nice.
That's nice, and that's very encouraging that we can do this. And seeing the steps that these two men took, it gives me encouragement. It gives us all encouragement.
But what gave them the advantage?
Knowledge.
And that's what we want to highlight. So the name of the show is called Knowledge is Wealth. What gave these men the advantage is the knowledge that they had. So we can stop believing in the misconception of the roadblockage that we have in front of us, the things that have been placed so that don't give us ahead. No, we can move ahead if we have the necessary knowledge. Mm-hmm. It's going to be twice as hard, as Coach said, to defend it, and to work strategies, but we gotta be up to the task.
And to build up your financial literacy, start reading newspapers like the Wall Street Journal. Mm-hmm. Just read it. Read the stories. Read some of the articles. Also, Yahoo Finance. I like it as a blog. Just check it out. Don't be so consumed into the celebrity gossip when you look at news. Let's look at some of the financial conversations and some of the corporate conversations, so that we can now figure out what's missing, what we know. Sometimes what we know here on the street level is valuable information on a high up corporate level. There's no way a person on 100th floor of an Empire State Building could understand what we're doing on Canal Street in and out of the pathways.
Knowledge is wealth, because if you look at it like this, right? We say knowledge is wealth when you're talking about the roadblocks in this system. Something was said to me a while ago by old head, man. He says, old indigenous dude. He said, look, man. He said, the system exists, is there. He said, but they made loopholes for themselves to be able to finagle on the system. And he gave me an example of taxes, like the tax loopholes and those type of things. How like Trump and these type of people, how they're not paying taxes, they don't go to jail. He said because there are legal loopholes that they created to get around the system that they established for themselves, right? He said, so just saying what knowledge is wealth, you got to read and understand the system that's in front of you. We know it's oppressive. We know what it is. It is what it is. But if you have knowledge of it and you study it and you understand it, those same loopholes that are legal and those same loopholes that are there,
they're available to you.
They're available to you too. You just don't have knowledge of it. They're hiding it from the indigenous people that you can't learn the loopholes. That's what keeps you in the situation you're in, because you don't understand what's going on. You don't have knowledge. And once you get knowledge, you can move.
We really should be getting this information at the dinner tables. And then we should be literate enough to have some of these in our schools before we get to college. Mm-hmm. So that when we graduate, we're moving with a higher aptitude and we're more competitive.
I love my two co-hosts, but I want to add something in. Don't kick me in.
We're gonna kick you out.
One thing that you're forgetting out, we can read the financial papers. That's good, financial literacy. But don't forget the spiritual finance. That precedes the other finance. You need shukr. We have to start showing Allah more gratitude for what He gave us. He's the provider. He says, وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. If you are thankful, I'm going to increase you in more. He gave us certain things that we need to put in play in order to be able to gain more. And that's the concept that we really need to realize. A lot of us Muslims don't understand what we have. So we think we're at a disadvantage when we really at an advantage. And you place yourself in a disadvantage when you're not thankful and appreciative for what the Creator already gave you. Do you not have 10 toes, 10 fingers? Do you not have 2 eyes? Do you not have an intellect? All of these things the Creator gave you as provisions. I give you an example. Allah says, فإذا قضيت الصلاة فانتشروا في الأرض وابتغوا من فضل الله. After Jumu'ah, what do Allah tell us to do? When the salat is over, when it is done, disperse throughout the land and seek what? What do he call it? He called it his fadl. He called the risk that you're looking for his bounty. He calls this his fadl. Allah says in another verse, فَابْتَغُوا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ الرِّزْقِ. Seek your risk with Allah. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ, he said in a beautiful hadith, what did he say about tawakkul? He said the birds go out with a what? Empty stomach,
and they come home with
and they come back with a full belly. This is that tawakkul needed place. So these things are key ingredients. Don't separate them. The West separate their finance from their deen. The Muslim keeps their deen and their finance together. So that's why I want to hone that in. We lose out bad when we keep thinking we're working from the disadvantage point, and we're really working from a vantage point.
We are.
Mm-hmm. We're not working from no disadvantage point. Allah is our Lord. We also have all of these different things, so we can utilize them to be able to create more, and Allah will give us more.
That's why I said
wanted
on
bring
5-2
that,
initiative. I always told the brothers
That was a
we
good point.
got to have spirituality, economics, and identity. I believe that. Those
Say
three
it again,
things,
slow down. Say it again.
spirituality, economics, and identity.
Isa Abu Isa, y'all coming hard.
That's how we get it. Spirituality, economics, and identity. And identity, right identity, not no false, fake identity that they give you in school. But spirituality, economics, and identity.
We get ready to wrap it up.
Let's cut them some slack.
Cut them some slack. Cut them some slack.
You can look up the New York Times is where we got most of that information. You can look that up for the Elmore Bolling story. You can also look up for Robert Gordon's story. And there's many more stories like that. This is one of our review time. We review normally a financial book or article, and we was able to do that. Hopefully y'all took anything. If you have any questions or any concerns, you know how to do. You can inbox us. You can actually leave what you would like us to discuss and go over. But you know, I think we did. I think this was a really pretty much.
Yes, those two stories covered a lot.
They did. That was
covered
nice.
a lot.
That's nice. And I hope they benefited from it.
All right, y'all have a nice day.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.